Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a battle-hardened veteran seeks peace on his Texas farm, a smug HOA dares to invade his land with entitled demands and midnight trespassing. But they picked the wrong man. What began with a gravel road turned into a legal war that would shake the fences of property rights forever. I don't like strangers on my land. Never have, never will. That's the first thing you need to understand about me. I spent 20 years moving military gear through combat zones across the world. Afghanistan, Iraq, even Libya once. And when I retired, I didn't want golf or cruises. I wanted land, dirt, space, quiet. So I bought myself a 160-acre stretch in Walker County, about 10 miles outside Huntsville, Texas. The kind of place where the stars still look like stars, and the only thing louder than the crickets at night is the occasional owl or my old diesel Ford coughing to life. It's a working farm, cattle, some soy, a small vineyard that's more for show than profit. The land's zoned strictly agricultural. It's fenced, posted, and legally mine in every conceivable way. That gravel path cutting across the north field? That's a private farm road. It ain't a shortcut, it ain't a public access route, and it sure as hell ain't a right-of-way. But for some reason, the folks down in Birch Trail Community, about a mile south, never quite got that memo. I blocked that road off 4 years ago. Big iron gate, signs that say private agricultural access, no trespassing, and even poured concrete bollards after someone tried to drive around it. That seemed to solve the problem. Until now. It started a week ago. Came back from checking fences in the west pasture and found a letter shoved into my front gate, sealed with one of those smug embossed HOA logos like it was a damn bank notice. From the office of the Birch Trail Community Association, the letter was written in the kind of passive-aggressive corporate tone that makes you want to wipe your boots on it. They were cordially requesting temporary cooperation to allow limited essential traffic through my land due to ongoing roadwork affecting neighborhood egress. They even attached a hand-drawn map, like some fifth grader had used Google Earth, and a crayon to trace a new traffic pattern right through my soybean rows. I stood there reading that thing twice, out loud, to my dog Radar. He's a blue heeler, smarter than half the county, and even he looked unimpressed. So I called the number listed, got voicemail the first 3 tries. On the 4th, someone picked up. A woman with that tone. You know the one. Sounds like she's already decided you're wrong. This is Karen Graham, she said, president of the Birch Trail HOA. How can I help you? I laid it out straight. Ms. Graham, this is Sam Harris. I own the ranch at the north end of your community. I received your letter about the access road. Oh, good. Yes, we were hoping to open a dialogue. I cut her off. There is no dialogue. That's private land. That road isn't public. Never was. I've maintained it, fenced it, paid the taxes on every square inch. You don't have a legal leg to stand on, and I'm not opening the gate. There was a long pause. Then that fake sweetness again. Well, I just thought you might consider the needs of the community. It's only until the county finishes work on Pine Mill Road. Not my problem, I said, and it never will be. You want to build your little maze of cul-de-sacs, be my guest, but it ends at my fence. She tried one more line about historical use patterns. I laughed. Karen, my granddaddy would have shot at anyone who called his tractor path a public right-of-way. I hung up, thought that was the end of it. Then, 2 days later, I spotted tire tracks by the north fence line. Deep ones. Off the gravel. Through a section of soft dirt by the tree line. A wooden no-access sign had been knocked over, splintered at the base. I checked the camera feed from the trail post. 2 vehicles, both SUVs. One had a Birch Trail Community decal on the rear window. I wasn't surprised, but I was pissed. That night, I loaded up some fresh concrete blocks, set them along the eastern brush path, where they'd obviously tried to go around the gate. Bolted a new metal sign into the fence. Private property violators will be prosecuted. Then I spent the rest of the night writing a formal cease and desist, printing out stills from the camera footage, and stapling everything into a neat packet. Addressed to Karen Graham, president of the HOA. I mailed it the next morning with tracking and signature required. I also made a copy for the sheriff's office, just to start a paper trail. I wasn't going to let some suburban paper pusher turn my farm into a freeway. 3 days after I sent that cease and desist letter, the wind shifted, literally and figuratively. I was up early, feeding the cattle before the sun crested the trees, when I noticed something off near the north field. The grass near the fence line looked flattened, and there were fresh ruts in the soil, like someone had done more than just test the boundary. They'd pushed right through. Again. I grabbed my thermos and walked the fence line. That private access only sign I'd bolted into the post was gone. Not snapped or blown down. Gone. Clean cuts at the mounting bolts, like someone had come in with a socket wrench and a purpose. There were new tracks leading off to the east, through my clover pasture, and disappearing behind the low ridge near the old cattle pond. Back at the house, I pulled the footage from the motion cameras. Sure enough, 2 vehicles had made the run just before dawn. One of them, white crossover with a dented bumper, clearly dodged the gate, drove over the brush divider, and followed the ridgeline like they'd mapped it. They knew where they were going. It wasn't just trespassing now. It was tactical. I didn't hesitate. Spent the rest of that day reinforcing every secondary path across the northern and eastern property lines. Hauled in 3 concrete Jersey barriers from a friend's equipment yard. Took me all afternoon with the loader and chains, but by sundown they were lined up tight across the alternate approach. I sealed off the cattle trail with welded pipe, then sunk metal posts along the edge of the old brush fire trail. This wasn't just security anymore, this was lockdown. I even dragged my old field cultivator across one of the overused ruts to turn up the tire tracks. Let 'em try driving through that mess at night. All they'd get was a busted oil pan and a new appreciation for property lines. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas fired up their orchestra, I finally sat down on the porch with a beer and the dog. I figured they'd get the message now. But of course, I underestimated just how entitled people can get when they think the world owes them convenience. The next morning, I found an envelope duct taped to my mailbox. No postage. Just my name in smug, cursive handwriting that screamed HO realness. Inside, another letter from Birch Trail, this time a bit less cordial and a hell of a lot more self-righteous. Karen had written a formal rebuttal, typed and double-spaced like she was submitting it to a damn county commission. She claimed my barriers constituted a willful obstruction to essential emergency access, and cited some half-baked nonsense about established usage corridors recognized by community precedent. They even tried to float the idea that their community had a shared stake in my access road because of its consistent role in local routing. I read that paragraph twice just to confirm they were serious. Then I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the burn barrel. Radar barked once like he agreed. I didn't respond, not with words anyway. Instead, I dropped by the county records office later that week. Took half a day, but I got what I wanted. Full plat maps, tax records going back to the 90s, and a signed, notarized survey confirming the entire gravel road, every foot of it, was within the bounds of my farm. Not once had it ever been dedicated as public access. No right-of-way, no easement, just mine. I paid for the extra certified copies, laminated one, and stuck it in my truck. Then I filed a formal trespassing report with the Walker County Sheriff's Office, attached photos, video stills, and the letter from the HOA. Deputies were polite, if a little amused. "We've had a few calls about that HOA," one of them muttered while taking the report. "They like to think they run everything south of the river." Before I left, I asked if they could add my property to a patrol loop, just for deterrence. The sergeant nodded. "Won't be nightly, but we'll swing by. Especially if you call it in fast." By now, it was personal. This wasn't just about my fences anymore. This was about respect, about the damn principle of the thing. You can live in a gated community with HOA fees and mulch regulations, but you don't get to spread your reach beyond your boundary and pretend you rule the county. I reinforced the gate lock with a steel shackle, upgraded my motion-activated lights, bought a cheap trail drone from the feed store, and started flying recon across the tree line in the evenings. Let's see how they liked being watched. I've dealt with all kinds of nonsense in my life. Corrupt vendors in Kandahar, bureaucrats in Washington, and one memorable lieutenant who couldn't navigate a parking lot without a drone. But nothing prepared me for the absurdity of what happened at 5 மணி 18 நிமிடம் காலை on a damn Thursday. I'd worked a long day before. Field repairs, one sick heifer, and a busted irrigation pipe that kept me up past midnight. I'd barely dozed off when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I should have ignored it. I wish I had, but you get a call that early, your brain goes to dark places. I sat up fast, already pulling on my jeans. "Hello?" I answered, voice rough with sleep. A pause. Then, "Mr. Harris, this is Karen Graham." "We have an emergency." I squinted at the dark ceiling, heart already climbing. "What kind of emergency?" "There's a child in medical distress," she said breathlessly. "One of our residents is trying to get to the hospital. Your concrete barriers are blocking the fastest route. You need to open the gate. Right now." For half a second I hesitated, my gut twisted, but then something in her voice, too rehearsed, too performative, gave me pause. "Call 911, I said flatly. "That's what you do in an emergency." "They're trying," she snapped, "but they can't get there in time. It's your barriers. They're delaying critical care." I didn't bother arguing. I just hung up, grabbed my coat and keys, and was in the truck in less than 2 minutes. Radar leapt into the passenger seat. Ears perked like he could already smell the bullshit. We flew down the gravel lane, suspension rattling as I cut through the pasture. My headlights hit the gate, and what do you know? Not a soul in sight. No cars, no kid, no tracks even. I stepped out with a flashlight, scanning the tree line. Nothing. Just the chilled pre-dawn silence and the occasional croak of a bullfrog from the pond nearby. The barriers were untouched. My trail camera's LED blinked softly. I flipped open the camera feed on my phone. Checked every angle, every timestamp. No one had come through, not before the call, not during, not after. That's when the anger hit me. Not slow and burning, but hot and sharp, like a punch to the ribs. She'd used a fake medical emergency. She'd used a child as a goddamn prop. I went back to the house and replayed the call. I had one of those call recording apps still running from when I dealt with equipment vendors. Thank God. Her voice, clear as day. "You need to open the gate. Right now." I saved the file, time-stamped it, and backed it up to the cloud. Then I checked the county 911 logs. Public record. No calls came from Birch Trail between 4 and 6 a.m. The whole thing was a bluff. A grotesque, manipulative stunt designed to guilt-trip me into compliance. She thought I'd panic. She thought I'd jump to obey, because who wouldn't unlock a gate if a child might die? But she hadn't counted on me doing the one thing she clearly hadn't, checking the facts. Later that morning, after a strong pot of coffee and a long walk to cool my temper, I wrote another letter. Not to Karen, she'd shown me she didn't deserve direct communication anymore, but to the Walker County Sheriff's Office, marked urgent. I included the recording, a log of camera activity, and a printout from the 911 dispatch center showing no call from the area. I wrote a detailed complaint alleging false reporting, attempted coercion, and harassment. I also copied the local emergency services board. If they were going to be dragged into a future HOA tantrum, they deserved a heads up. That afternoon, as if on cue, 2 HOA members showed up at the outer fence. Midday. Clean shirts, clipboard in hand. I watched them from the porch as they peered at my signposts and took notes. I didn't say a word, just sat there with radar, sipping coffee. One of them raised his hand in a lazy wave. I didn't wave back. They left after 10 minutes, and I made sure to walk out later and verify every sign, every post, every lock. Nothing had been touched. Yet. But I knew now. They were escalating, and I wasn't about to let it go unanswered. 2 days passed without incident. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace, more like the pause before a thunderclap. That Friday morning, I was repairing a busted hinge on one of the western pasture gates when a white SUV pulled into my front driveway. Didn't recognize the plates, but I recognized the posture. Straight back, hands tight on the wheel, nose aimed toward the windshield like it was about to judge me. Guy steps out in a navy blazer and khakis, holding a padded envelope. He barely looked at me before striding up with the stiff gait of someone who thinks paperwork is a weapon. "Mr. Samuel Harris." "That's me." He handed over the envelope. "You've been formally served. HOA complaint. Filed with the Walker County Civil Office." I took the envelope, not even surprised. "Sure, you boys been practicing that delivery in front of a mirror?" He didn't answer. Just walked off like he'd dropped off a bomb and didn't want to be around for the blast. Inside the envelope was a copy of a complaint filed by Birch Trail Community HOA, signed by President Karen Graham and their legal rep, some puffed-up firm out of Conroe. In short, they were accusing me of creating a public safety hazard, restricting historical access used by the community for emergency routing, and malicious obstruction of shared infrastructure. Shared infrastructure? That road wasn't even on their damn maps until 2 months ago. There was also a highlighted paragraph about interfering with implied easement rights under Texas Code 22.08b, which I knew for a fact didn't apply here. Implied easement requires continuous, obvious, and uncontested public use for at least 10 years. And the gate's been locked for 4. I sat down at my kitchen table and read every page. Twice. Then I opened a folder marked Land Records and pulled out what they should have expected to find before they started this mess. Full chain of title. The original subdivision plat from 1979. The county certified land survey I'd laminated just last week. And most importantly, the signed 2003 declaration that dissolved a now defunct farm co-op road agreement, the only document that ever came close to granting shared use of the land. I didn't just have evidence, I had a damn wall of it. I called my attorney, Richard Long, ex-military like me, now a land use specialist with a reputation for politely destroying people in court. Sounds like they're fishing, he said, after reviewing the scanned documents. They're hoping you cave to avoid court costs. Not a chance in hell, I said. Can we counterfile? Absolutely. And we will. That same afternoon, we filed an official response with the county clerk. Motion to dismiss based on lack of standing, supported by all our documentation. We also added a formal complaint against the HOA for frivolous litigation and property interference. The sheriff's office got a copy, along with a separate packet containing the full timeline of their trespassing attempts, the manipulated emergency call, and the trail cam footage of their vehicles. Karen wanted to play legal chess. Fine. I brought the whole damn board. By sundown, I was back on the porch with radar, watching clouds roll in from the west. Storm coming, figuratively and literally. It was just after 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when I left the farm to haul my tractor into town for its annual service. I hitched it to the flatbed, double-checked the straps, and locked up the gate behind me like I always do. Figured I'd grab some diesel on the way back and be home by midnight. Didn't even make it halfway. My phone buzzed halfway down County Line Road. Motion alert from the north camera, then another, then another. I pulled over to the shoulder and opened the feed. And there they were. Headlights. 3 sets weaving through the dark like fireflies with no regard for fences, crop rows, or common sense. They'd cut through. I turned the truck around so fast the trailer fishtailed. By the time I got back, the air stank of exhaust and churned up earth. My north gate was wide open, not unlocked, gone. The lock and hinges had been sliced clean off, left dangling like limp limbs. Sparks from a cut-off wheel, if I had to guess. I pulled up to the crest of the ridge, headlights sweeping across the field. That's when I saw them. 3 SUVs creeping across my property like it was rush hour. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. They'd taken the gravel farm road like it was a private tollway, my tollway. I drove straight at them, flipped on the floodlights mounted to my trailer hitch, and angled the truck sideways across the road, blocking the exit point by the southeast fence. Radar barked once and jumped down, his hackles up. The lead SUV skidded to a stop 10 yards short. A woman jumped out. Even in the blinding light, I recognized the shape of her posture, shoulders pulled back like a teacher scolding a child. Karen. She came storming toward my truck like she thought the sheer force of her entitlement would make it move. "You're obstructing traffic," she yelled, voice barely audible over her own headlights. "This is a community emergency route." I stepped down from the cab, slowly, deliberately, and walked into the light. I didn't say a word. Just pointed to the mangled remains of my gate lying in the grass like roadkill. "You destroyed private property," I said flatly. She had the audacity to scoff. "It was illegally blocking emergency egress. We had no choice." "The sheriff might disagree." "I spoke with the board." "This ain't a board meeting," I snapped. "This is felony trespassing, Karen." Behind her, 2 other vehicles idled uncertainly. Their drivers weren't getting out, probably realizing they'd just followed the wrong damn queen into the wrong damn kingdom. I called the sheriff right then and there. Didn't scream, didn't threaten, just gave my name, location, and the words, "property destruction in progress." By the time the deputy arrived 20 minutes later, Karen had shifted tactics. Now she was calm, polite, smiling that strained smile that looks like it hurts the cheeks. "Deputy," she cooed. "We were simply navigating an established community access path, one that's been used for years." The deputy, young but sharp, gave me a look. "You got proof this is private?" I handed him my laminated survey and a printout from the 2003 land agreement cancellation. He read it slowly, then turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you and your companions to remain here while I document the damage." Karen's jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might fuse. She muttered something about legal overreach. And this isn't over. The deputy photographed the broken gate, the tire ruts through my clover, and the damage to a metal post that had been knocked sideways by one of the SUVs. Then he took statements. Mine was short. Karen's, not so much. When it was over, he handed her a formal notice of property violation and advised her to let the courts sort it out before setting foot anywhere near my land again. She didn't respond. Just climbed into her car and reversed like she was retreating from a failed invasion. I stood there in the dark long after they were gone, wind tugging at my jacket, radar sniffing the air like it still wasn't clean. My gate was gone, my field was scarred, and my patience, already frayed, had finally snapped. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was war. The next morning, I didn't feed the cattle. I didn't check the fences. I didn't even make coffee. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mangled gate leaning against my wall like a war trophy, and I called Richard Long. "We're suing," I said before he could even say hello. He didn't ask for details. He already knew. By noon, we had the first draft of the complaint drawn up. Harris versus Birch Trail Community Association and Karen Graham, individually and as HOA president. The charges: trespass, vandalism, destruction of private property, harassment, false emergency reporting, and infliction of emotional distress. We were asking for damages totaling $48,000, concrete, fencing, labor, crop damage, and legal fees. But Richard wanted more. We should include a request for a court injunction, he said. Prevent them from even attempting to cross your land again, permanently. Make it permanent and public, I said. I want a ruling on the record. We filed in Walker County Court the same afternoon. That night, Richard posted a brief summary of the case on his firm's website. Local legal blogs picked it up. A small farming advocacy page reposted it. Then, someone from the local paper called, asking for comment. I said what I needed to say. I'm not against my neighbors, I told them. But if they think they can steamroll a private citizen because it's convenient, they're in for a surprise. 2 days later, I was on the front page of the Walker County Tribune. Headline read, "Farmer Fights HOA in Landmark Property Rights Suit." That's when the calls started. Not from Birch Trail, no, they'd gone silent, but from other landowners, folks I'd never met who'd had similar fights with HOAs. One guy outside Livingston said his HOA tried to force him to mow a 10-acre wildflower field because it looked unmanaged from the road. A woman near Crockett said they threatened to fine her for keeping chickens. All of them had one thing in common. They weren't even members of the HOA causing the trouble. The support rolled in. Someone even offered to donate to a legal fund. I told them thanks, but I had it handled. And then, because karma has a sense of humor, the HOA fired back. Or at least tried. Karen's attorney sent a notice of intent to countersue, claiming that my lawsuit was defamatory and part of a coordinated effort to discredit community governance. They said my refusal to cooperate with emergency detour protocols had placed multiple families at risk. Richard read the notice and laughed out loud. This isn't a lawsuit, it's a tantrum with a letterhead. Still, we responded. Officially, we added the false counterclaim threat as another point in our case, intimidation through legal harassment. But it wasn't just about lawsuits anymore. That same week, Richard got a call from a contact in the county zoning board. Apparently, Karen had been quietly reaching out to local officials, trying to raise concerns about my property. Said she suspected I was storing hazardous materials, that I might be operating an unlicensed distillery. Hell, she even floated that I might be housing livestock too close to a residential zone. All baseless, all traceable. We documented everything. Every email, every phone call, every piece of petty retaliation. By the end of the week, Richard filed an amendment to our complaint, including all the new harassment attempts. We were now asking for an additional $24,000 in punitive damages, plus a court order barring any HOA officer from contacting me or my land service providers directly. They wanted war. Now they had one, with paperwork, deadlines, and witnesses. And unlike Karen, I didn't bluff. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and sharper pencils. You'd think something as serious as property rights would take place somewhere with a bit more dignity. But in Walker County, courtrooms still look like refurbished high school auditoriums. Didn't matter. I wasn't here for the decor. I was here to win. Karen showed up wearing a charcoal pantsuit and a scarf like she was channeling a courtroom episode of some prestige drama. Her attorney, slick, tan, and visibly annoyed, carried a briefcase that probably cost more than the fencing they destroyed. Richard, in contrast, walked in with a canvas folder and a steel thermos of black coffee. No frills, just facts. The judge was a no-nonsense woman named Sandra Cordell, mid-50s, known for tossing out cases that smelled like HOA gamesmanship. As soon as we saw who was presiding, Richard gave me the faintest nod. We had a shot. The first hearing was all preliminary motions, but it didn't take long before the judge zeroed in on the key issue, ownership and access. "Ms. Graham," she said, peering over her glasses, "your claim is that this road has been historically used by the public." Karen's lawyer cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. We argue that through regular and sustained community use, and yet," the judge interrupted, "you've provided no documented easement, no county recognition of public access, and no recorded servitude, correct?" he faltered. "Well, the implication. The law doesn't deal in implication." I tried not to smile. Richard stepped up and presented our map, the 2003 co-op cancellation, and the trail cam footage. "Not only is the road entirely within Mr. Harris's property boundary, Your Honor, but it has been gated, posted, and secured for over 4 years. That removes any question of implied easement by Texas standards." Judge Cordell glanced at the camera stills, particularly one showing Karen's SUV driving across my freshly seeded clover. Her brow arched. "And these vehicles, were they invited?" "No, ma'am," I said clearly. Karen squirmed in her seat. Richard continued, presenting the audio recording of the 5:18 a.m. call, where Karen falsely claimed a child was in medical distress. We played the clip in open court. The silence that followed was long and bitter. Karen's lawyer fumbled out some nonsense about heightened emotions, but Judge Cordell didn't bite. "I suggest you advise your client that invoking non-existent emergencies to pressure a landowner is not only unethical, it borders on criminal manipulation," she said. That's when the big one hit. We submitted a written statement from a former HOA board member, anonymously at first, who revealed that Karen had told the board 2 months prior that she would force the farmer to cave and that she was willing to fabricate community need if necessary. Judge Cordell's face hardened. "That may shift this case from civil to criminal, counselor. You may want to have your client consider legal representation beyond land use." Karen's lawyer asked for an adjournment. Granted, but the damage was done. After court, in the hallway, Richard leaned in. "We've got them by the throat now." By the time we reached the truck, I had voicemails from 2 news outlets wanting to cover the case. And that wasn't even the most satisfying part. That night, I got an email from someone I hadn't expected, John McCready, Birch Trail resident, Vietnam vet, quiet, smart, no time for HOA nonsense. His message was short. "Keep pushing. We're voting soon. She's not going to survive this." I didn't expect the retaliation to come so soon, or so petty. 2 days after the hearing, I went out to check the irrigation valves near the east tree line. The valves were fine. The pipes weren't. Someone had taken a hacksaw to the PVC. Clean slice. No mess. No vandal's rage. Just cold, deliberate sabotage. Water had been trickling out all night, soaking the soil near the clover bed. I followed the wet ground and found footprints, 3 sets, leading to the east fence. They'd stepped right over the drainage ditch, cutting through the thinnest part of the perimeter. I knew it was them. Not Karen, maybe, but someone under her influence. Someone angry and dumb enough to escalate even while a lawsuit loomed over their heads. I replaced the piping, called the sheriff again, and installed 2 new infrared cameras, one facing the fence, one at ground level near the pipes. Enough was enough. The next day, I got the call. Richard again. Early morning. "You'll want to hear this," he said. Turns out, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. Several members had quietly circulated a motion of no confidence in Karen. Enough signatures came in to trigger a vote. And by some miracle, or maybe just old-fashioned accountability, the vote passed. Karen was removed as HOA president effective immediately. Official reason: violation of fiduciary duty and misrepresentation of community interests. Unofficially, she pissed off the wrong farmer, but she wasn't done. That evening, as I was stacking hay in the barn, a Lexus I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. Out stepped Karen, alone. No clipboard, no smug smile. Just those dead calm HOA eyes that see property lines as suggestions. I didn't move, didn't say a word. She walked halfway to the barn and stopped. "I'm not the enemy, Mr. Harris," she said. I raised an eyebrow. Could have fooled me. There are bigger things at play here than fences and fields. I laughed once, sharp. Funny. That's exactly what the last HOA rep told me right before he tried to rezone my water rights. She bristled. "You've made this personal. You made it personal when you called me at 5 in the morning and lied about a dying kid." She didn't flinch, just smoothed her jacket. "I'm stepping down," she said, "but the HOA's legal team isn't going anywhere. The complaint still stands." "You're bluffing," I said. "That complaint's already hanging by a thread." I wouldn't be so sure. She turned and walked away, heels crunching over the gravel. Didn't even look back. Later that night, I received a letter from the HOA's law firm, this time not a threat, but an offer, settlement. They proposed dropping the complaint and offering $5,000 toward my repairs and fencing, but only if I agreed to permanently allow non-emergency vehicle access during peak hours for Birch Trail residents. It wasn't even a bribe. It was a leash. I sent it to Richard. He called me back 15 minutes later, half laughing. "They just handed us motive," he said. "That settlement offer implies intent to leverage legal pressure to acquire land use. That's coercion by another name." He added it to the case file. Meanwhile, I wasn't taking any more chances. I hired a local welder to install a new steel gate at the north access. This one came with an automatic locking system and remote ID reader. If your license plate wasn't whitelisted, it didn't open, period. I posted new signs, bigger, bolder, and backed by ordinance code. Private agricultural road. No public access trespassing will be prosecuted. 2 days later, the new gate recorded its first blocked vehicle, Karen's Lexus. She didn't even try to honk. Just sat there for a full minute before backing up and disappearing into the trees. The court date arrived like a storm front, slow at first, then all at once. The courthouse was fuller this time. Word had spread. A few reporters sat in the back rows, notepads ready. 2 local landowners I'd never met gave me small nods when I walked in. Even the bailiff gave me a look that said, "You're the guy with the farm." Karen wasn't smiling. She had new counsel, older, more cautious. Gone was the shiny young litigator with his gelled hair and empty threats. This one looked like he charged by the quarter hour and didn't waste syllables. Judge Cordell entered briskly and got straight to it. Our motion for injunctive relief, the HOA's attempted counterclaim, and the growing pile of harassment evidence were all on the docket. Richard stood tall and delivered. He laid it out like a battlefield map. My ownership, their trespass, the gate destruction, the midnight calls, the sabotage, the settlement offer that implied leverage. He played the call recording again, and then the icing on the cake. A new deposition from another Birch Trail Board member, a woman named Lynette. Quiet, polite, but sharp as barbed wire. She testified under oath that Karen had instructed her to delay Sam with noise while they established precedent of usage. Precedent. That was the word they were hoping would win them a claim to my road. It was the same word that buried them. Karen's lawyer attempted to shift the narrative, suggesting community hardship, limited routes due to road work, vague allusions to neighborly goodwill, but it all rang hollow. Especially when Richard pointed out that not once, had the HOA offered to pay for temporary access, sign a waiver of liability, or even ask permission before barging in. Judge Cordell leaned back and steepled her fingers. "The issue here is not whether a private landowner has the right to protect his property," she said slowly. "He does, unequivocally. The issue is the extent to which this HOA attempted to fabricate justification to override those rights." Then she ruled. The HOA's complaint was dismissed with prejudice. Our injunction request was granted. The court issued a permanent order barring any Birch Trail HOA representative or agent from attempting to access, modify, or interfere with my land in any way. Karen Graham was referred to the county prosecutor for possible charges of false reporting and document tampering. The courtroom buzzed. A reporter stepped outside mid-ruling to send the headline. Karen sat frozen. No rage this time. Just that look, the one people get when they realize the rules they enforce don't work outside their fences. Afterward, as I walked out into the Texas sun, Richard clapped me on the back. "You just made case law." I didn't smile. Not yet. Because it wasn't over. That evening, I walked the northern boundary with radar. The sun was setting, and a light breeze moved through the fence line like a whisper. I stopped by the new gate, checked the welds, ran my hand along the steel post. Solid. Then I noticed a tire mark. Just one. Faint. Fresh. Not near the gate. Not on the road. Out in the field, where no one had any damn business driving. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the cameras, monitored the fields, drank coffee until it felt like motor oil, and waited. The single tire track had been shallow, no more than a quick roll through the edge of my North Clover rows. Could have been a county utility truck, could have been a lost driver, but I knew better. The next morning, I reviewed the footage again. Nothing from the north. But just before sunrise, one of the new infrared cameras on the eastern perimeter picked up movement. A figure walking, alone, hoodie, head down, on foot. They didn't get close to the house, just walked along the fence, paused at the irrigation control box, then disappeared back into the brush. That was the final straw. I called the sheriff's office and requested a patrol unit to file a trespass by night report. The deputy arrived, took photos, and promised to log the incident. He was polite, but it was clear they were reaching their limit too. You know, he said, most HOA drama stops at mailboxes and lawn heights. This feels like a damn sequel. Yeah, I muttered. One where they don't learn. But this time, I decided to flip the script. That afternoon, I called a few people, neighbors from just outside Birch Trail. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd had run-ins with Karen or her board. There'd been fines issued for non-existent violations, property lines disputed with outdated surveys, and even one guy who had his tool shed spray painted with code violation as a prank, though nobody could prove who did it. So we met, quietly, at my barn. 5 landowners, one goal, collective legal action. We hired the same firm Richard recommended, began compiling statements, documents, photos. One guy even had audio from an HOA meeting where Karen had implied she knew how to make things hard for people who didn't cooperate. What started as a single lawsuit was turning into a movement. The local paper picked up the story again, this time with a headline that made me laugh out loud. Birch Trail HOA faces backlash after legal defeat. Residents and neighbors pushback. 2 weeks later, Karen was officially charged by the county DA with filing a false emergency report, trespassing conspiracy, and attempted document falsification. She took a plea, no jail time, but 3 years probation, community service, and a court-ordered fine of $72,000, payable to yours truly. She sold her house and left the state. The new HOA president, some retired dentist named Clark, sent me a certified letter. In it, he apologized for the unfortunate actions of the previous administration, offered to remove all internal references to my property from community maps, and formally acknowledged that Birch Trail residents would never again request access, through or across my land. I framed the damn thing. Now the fence line's doubled, cameras are synced to my phone, the new gate, steel core, pressure-triggered alarms, solar backup. I even named it Gatekeeper. Radar likes it too. He sits by it like it's his new watchtower. Sometimes I catch myself laughing. It started with a gravel road and a ridiculous letter. It ended with a court ruling, an apology, and my property more secure than a bank vault. But it wasn't just about land. It was about standing your ground. About showing people that just because you're not loud doesn't mean you're weak. That fences exist for a reason, and not just to mark boundaries, but to keep integrity in and nonsense out. Now, there's a new sign posted along the North Road, just beneath the cameras. Private agricultural zone. Trespassers will be legally harvested, and wouldn't you know it, even the deer started walking straighter.